Hey YouTube, it's me Louis, and I'm back at Unit E in Sheffield for another episode. And this week I thought I'd go over how to break down and practice and understand how to climb competition style boulders. So first off, I thought I'd talk a little bit about what we mean by competition style bouldering, because it is something that comes up more and more nowadays. Generally, for me anyway, a competition style boulder means something that uses a lot of dynamic movement usually. Everyone talks about it being this very parkour heavy style. I quite like it. I agree it's not something that comes up as regularly outdoors, but for competitions, dynamic movement is a really useful skill for those particular style of boulders. One thing that I think is quite good about them, and this is also why I think they're used more and more in competitions nowadays, is that although they might not be physically too demanding, the margin for error is really small, meaning when you land in various body positions, they actually might not take that much strength to control, but landing in them with just the right amount of force is a really delicate art. So I'm going to use one of my favorite boulders of today's session as an example for us to look at how we read it, how we break it down into the different body positions, and then how we practice building a dynamic movement sequence which we can then put together and hopefully do that climb with. Let's start with how to read these boulders. Now, this is something that naturally gets easier and easier the longer you climb for and the more of these boulders you do, because it really is often just a game of spotting patterns that you've seen before. So with this one, for example, I've seen enough jump into toe hook catches that I recognize that low volume as something that's probably going to be good to catch with my toe, and that distance to the next handhold, yeah, I can imagine catching that position and it makes sense leading into it from that first move. I can also start working things out a little bit through trial and error. Like if I didn't recognize this as a toe hook catch position, I could start asking myself, well, what else could this volume down here possibly be for? Because it's way too low that I'm going to end up down there with my hands, and it's on there for a reason, so there we go. It leads me slowly towards I'm probably going to catch it with a toe. Now, aside from spotting patterns that we've seen before, or just trying to use obvious clues like, why is this hold all the way down here? It must be for something. You can also just try and imagine, okay, well, I don't recognize any patterns, but where can I imagine that I would actually be able to stop and rest at different points on this climb? And you can imagine all of the different body positions that you could see, and then you can start thinking, okay, well, now I've seen all the different positions I want to be in, how do I start moving through them? The last tip that I give is that the route setters who design these climbs do want the climbers who try them to do them a certain way, and so they'll design them with a lot of little subtle clues to try and push the climbers who try them into certain sequences. So they will leave little clues like positioning a foothold an exact certain angle so that you can only move a certain direction off it. So start looking out for those little clues, and that might also give you some answers. It might be that we've now got to the point looking at our boulder, we can see how to do it. And it might be that we've read, okay, yeah, great, I do a running jump into a toe hook catch, then I do another big dyno for the finish, and we can see how to do it, but actually doing it is another matter. Competition boulders often involve a sequence of coordinated movements that you have to pull off perfectly in a row in order to stick a certain movement, like this boulder that we're looking at now. I need to jump onto the volume, catch the left hand hold, switch feet and catch the toe hook. If I do, and this is what I like about competition bouldering, if I do all of those things in order and I do them reasonably well, the move doesn't feel that hard. If I do those things in the wrong order, or if I get one of them significantly wrong, the whole thing falls apart and it doesn't feel possible at all. A really useful thing that I'd recommend doing when you come across competition style boulders like this, and something that I spend a lot of time doing, is breaking it down into all the different parts of that sequence. Practice each different part of that sequence in isolation, and then don't do the whole thing at once because that can often be quite overwhelming. Start adding little bits of the sequence on top of each other so that you're getting really used to doing them in that specific order with a specific timing. And then keep practicing building those sequences. I often also repeat each part of the sequence many times so it feels really familiar. And then once I've practiced all of those positions and all those different parts of the sequence, then I try and put the whole thing together. So a word of advice for anyone who, unlike me, doesn't really enjoy this style of competition bouldering with like parkour style movements and lots of coordination, I'd recommend getting stuck in because I don't think it's going to go anywhere anytime soon. The route setters who are in charge of splitting the athletes and making sure they have a certain number of qualifiers, a certain number of finalists, there is a reason that I think they're starting to rely more on this dynamic style. And it is what I talked about earlier, that the physical difficulty isn't too bad, but the margin for error is quite small. And when you're splitting a field of athletes who are all ludicrously strong and can all pull really hard on small holds, Splitting them by physical strength is really difficult suddenly. So splitting them with a few coordination style boulders where someone might slip or someone might do it on their third go instead of their second is a much easier way for the route setters to split competitors. So if you're one of those people who thinks, oh, I really don't want to do dynamic bouldering, but I do want to do competitions, start practicing them. I made the same mistake with my slab climbing in that I practiced everything else, but I didn't enjoy climbing on slabs. So I didn't really practice them. And then, of course, they always came up in competitions, and I was never prepared. So practice the things that you think might be weaker areas, like dynamic movement, now outside of competition environments, so that when you get to the competitions, hooray, it's much more familiar, feels loads easier, you've already practiced it. So there you go, team. There's all my advice for how to go about reading, breaking down, practicing the different parts of the sequence, and hopefully doing a tricky coordination style boulder. Try it out, let me know in the comments if it works, and like, subscribe, do all the YouTube things. I'll see you next week. Bye, team.